Welcome to Paul's Passive House. Today I'm going to address this space here. This is where my wall meets the ceiling. And if you'll recall from the last episode, all of these pieces were hand cut to fit into the ceiling joists. These ceiling joists have to be sealed, and at this time, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to do it. As I mentioned before in previous episodes, a lot of what I do is standing around trying to figure out what I should be doing. A lot of other things that I do is trying things that don't work, then undoing the thing that didn't work and doing something else. Here I'm cleaning out this space, trying to get it prepped for what I think is going to be a solution. At this stage of the retrofit, I didn't want to use as much spray foam. So I was trying everything I could to minimize the amount of spray foam I was going to use. But I had to fill up those gaps. And as you can probably imagine, spray foam seems like a very easy fit. You'll notice here that I've got a very thin piece of the 3.5-inch poly iso. My initial plan was to cut this down into smaller sections and insert them into these gaps and then seal them thereafter. After some measuring and pondering and an initial dry fit, I decided this wasn't going to work. What I decided to do next was to take down some of this plastic, and then I'm going to install it as essentially a catch so that it will catch any dripping spray foam that happens to come out of those gaps. In the end here, I did decide I'm going to have to spray foam. One of the issues with spray foaming this area was I had to cut it down. It bulges way out and you have to cut it back. So it's wasteful and it's also messy. Here I tack up some of this plastic and then I'm gonna spray foam it, and then I'm gonna tack that plastic up underneath the spray foam so that anything that falls out falls onto the plastic. Forgetting that I need to mist the area with water first, I run and grab my water bottle quickly. Now I mist the whole area, making sure to get inside those gaps, and it's ready for spray foam. A final misting. It helps a lot to use quite a bit of mist because this spray foam really needs that moisture in the air. And in the climate that I'm in, it's very, very dry. I put some mist on the spray foam after it starts to cure. And it's time to address this section of the wall. This section is right over my front door. And you can see there's all the polyiso from up in the attic with significant gaps in some areas. Again, these gaps are going to be addressed with spray foam. And I've actually done another process over in my living room. First, though, let's have a look. Look at how nicely the foam is cured in the corners. Those corners were letting in a lot of air and rodents and other things. And so I sealed those up really tight. I also have some special considerations with this electrical. That's a light switch for my exterior light and my dining room light. And so I had to pay some special attention to those, making sure to mark them. You get a little bit of look at more of my spray foam in the corners. And here we see I used a technique in this room, which is my living room, that I really liked. It turned out really good, and it didn't waste any spray foam, and it didn't get on the floor or anything like that. And so now I'm going to show you what I did. I actually did this off camera, but now I'm going to show you that technique. Before we get started, I turned off all the power and marked all these wires. I wanted to make sure that I understood exactly where they went and why. One last look at these gaps. You can see that they're nice and cleaned out, and I have pre-misted them. Now, one aspect of this that isn't going to translate very well onto the screen is that I'm actually going to have to fill these gaps from up in the attic. What I did was I stapled some plastic sheeting to a piece of 1/4-inch plywood that I had laying around, and now I'm going to install that plywood under those gaps. What that does is it provides a nice stable backer for the spray foam. And after the spray foam cures, I'll be able to take off that plywood, and because there's plastic there, the spray foam won't stick. Here I am installing another piece of plastic. I'm going to need 2 pieces. It's a very simple process, and it saved a lot of time. Now that I'm finishing up with the installation, I'm going to go into the attic and spray into those gaps from up there. It was just a much easier process. It sucks being in the attic, but it was a much easier process, and it came out much better than spraying from down here. Another thing to keep in mind is those cans, the cans of spray foam, have to be held upright. And it's not the easiest thing to get the cans into the correct position from down here. It was much easier to hold the cans and spray into these gaps from up in the attic, not because there's more room up there, but because the cans are upright and the foam comes out much better. It's a better quality foam. So one thing I wanted to show you was just how intrusive this whole process was. This is my kitchen, obviously. And of course, I have to clean everything all the time. Every time I cook, and I cook lots of my meals at home, I have to clean off all this space. This is my kitchen. This is all the crap that I had to store here and keep here because my office, which you're looking at now, is essentially filled with supplies and tools and extra water. But during this whole process, I still had to do all my laundry and cook all my meals. But I needed all of this space and all of these shelves to be filled with tools and supplies and things that I would need to do this retrofit. Some of these shelves I keep just because I go to the gym and hang upside down, so there are my zero gravity boots. Looking now at my dining room, you can see I needed this space to work, so I had to clear it out, and there's some insulation that I'm installing, by the way. And finally, you get to take a look at my living room. This is where I get to lounge at the end of the day. It's relatively clean, but I have to put up plastic because there's mineral wool that's open to the air. And if I turn on my swamp cooler, it blows dust around. And then, of course, there's Bronson. He's sitting there having his good time, but it's less than ideal. We still hang out, we still watch TV, but there's a bunch of insulation right behind me while I'm doing it. And there's all this other crap everywhere else. So it's just an insanely intrusive project to do this inside. If I were to redo this, I would probably try to figure out a way to do it outside. That way it wouldn't get into the interior of the house. But it's sort of 6 one, half a dozen of the other. It's difficult to determine what the best way is. I would have lost all that space inside my walls for the mineral wool. I wouldn't have gotten into those walls to clean out all the rat poop and all the dead bugs and the dead mice and everything else that was behind there. So I'm actually glad I did this to get rid of all that, those old pests and to clean up the walls, but there was a huge trade-off. Also, if I had done the insulation on the outside, I would not have had a continuous thermal barrier. It would have been very difficult to connect that exterior insulation, if I had chosen to do it in the exterior, to the attic insulation. So again, it's just, there's a lot of difficult problems that need to be solved in this type of retrofit.